Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, today in Strasbourg, in the European Parliament, there was a kind of a nasty little contretemps between Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, the person who likes to present herself as I am the president of the EU. And she arrives, an unelected figure, but she's the president of the EU. And Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, because Hungary is at the moment, in the middle of its 6-month presidency of the EU, and it's kind of infuriating the rest of the EU because they don't like, Orban's diplomacy. They don't like a lot of other things about it, but they do not like this diplomacy that he has undertaken. So Orban went before the parliament and gave its sort of general review of the situation in the EU, which of course he said is bleak. And then Ursula von der Leyen got up and launched into a kind of a personal tirade, particularly against Hungary and, of course, Orban. So I just want to show you how
Gauleiter, yeah.
That's right, the guy Gauleiter, yes. And so here we have the so here was Orban says migration and security threats could disintegrate the Schengen area, and then talks there about this. Where are we? And then it goes on. He says one of the most pressing issues is the war in Ukraine, which he described as a European conflict with escalating consequences. There is a war raging in Ukraine, and this has a ripple effects around Europe. Severe conflicts are also affecting the Middle East and Africa, all of which carry the risk of further escalation. He linked these geopolitical tensions directly to the migration crisis, stating the migration crisis has now reached levels not seen since 2015, with illegal migration and security threats potentially leading to the collapse of the Schengen area. And then he talks about the economic issues. The EU's economic growth has consistently lagged behind that of the United States and China. Our productivity is growing slower than that of our competitors, and our share of global trade is shrinking.
It's very interesting that he should say the past 2 decades, because that's about the age of the EU. When it was the European Economic Community, it was a powerhouse. Everyone,
that's right. It's not. Yeah, exactly.
Most important criticisms of the EU.
That's right. And he noted that European companies face significantly higher energy costs compared to the US, with electricity prices 2 or 3 times higher and gas prices 4 to 5 times higher.
How did that happen?
Wow. I don't know. It's very, very, very interesting. We need to set up some kind of a committee to look into this mystery. The consequences of disconnecting from Russian energy have led to a significant loss in GDP and required massive financial reallocations to build the infrastructure needed for liquefied natural gas imports. He emphasized that in energy-intensive industries, which are vital to the European economy, production has already dropped by 10 or 15%. And we know the German economy is just really getting hammered. That's the German economy, the powerhouse of Europe. I mean, it's
all self-inflicted.
Exactly. And then Orban also touched on Europe's energy future, warning against the illusion that renewable energy alone will solve the continent's energy problems. Even if we meet all our renewable energy goals, fossil fuels will still determine energy prices for many years to come. And he also voiced concerns about the European Green Deal, stating the goal was to create green jobs, but in reality, deindustrialization has led to job losses, which is correct.
See, he has the double whammy because they hate him and they hate his message. So I mean,
they hate that message. And the Greens
really rained down the party, didn't
That's right, exactly. They're really, really pissed off, and the Greens are the ones who hate him most of all. But luckily, the Greens have been getting really hammered in one election after another. So whereas the populists have been doing rather well. So now von der Leyen got up angrily, speech by President von der Leyen at the European Parliament plenary on the presentation of the program of activities of the Hungarian presidency.
On activities of the Hungarian presidency.
That's right.
It's very sinister, and when it's very sinister, and when there is a German accent, it's even worse.
Yes, she always seems very sinister. Something about her. I mean, she's sort of petite, but she's terrifying because she's petite. I mean, it's like, you know.
Yeah, but it's, you know, what was it? Harrison Ford's film. What was something in the Lost Ark?
Oh, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah.
And remember when the German official, the ultra Nazi there, when he smiled, it wasn't because he was amused, that it was like evil,
right,
incarnate was in front, and that's what gave him so much joy. I always think of her.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There is that. You know, I mean, there was a reason why we quote her saying, "We have the tools." I mean, that it just captures the essence of the personality. Today, I would like to stay focused on some of the most pressing issues that we are facing during this presidency of the Council. First, Ukraine. Second, competitiveness. Third, migration. Our Ukrainian friends are heading into the third winter of war, and Russia is trying to make it the hardest winter yet. Last month, Russia sent over 1,300 drones against Ukrainian cities. Throughout the summer, hundreds of missiles have rained on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Countless Ukrainians have been killed or wounded. Families have been separated. Cities have been destroyed. And then right away, the question arises, so what are you going to do about bringing it to an end? You know, I mean, this sounds terrible. Shouldn't we then bring this to an end rather than go into a third winter? Which is the question that Orban repeatedly asks. And then she says, the world has witnessed the atrocities of Russia's war. And yet there are still some who blame this war not on the invader, but on the invaded. So this is getting personal now. Not on Putin's lust for power, but on Ukraine's thirst for freedom. Thirst. So I want to ask them, would they ever blame the Hungarians for the Soviet invasion of 1956? Well, you know, you say, yeah, but you could blame certain people who led the Hungarians to think that somebody was going to come in on their behalf and fight on their behalf, which didn't materialize. And so therefore, you know, those Hungarians who lost their lives kind of lost their lives for no good reason. Nobody came in to save them. I mean, whether the Americans promised or they didn't promise, or whether they led people to believe that they would come in, either way, the Hungarians were under the illusion that the Americans were going to come in 56.
Well, in Kiev, there were those that lusted for power.
Yes, right.
Well,
right.
Okay.
Right.
And freedom, again, this is, it really irritates me.
The thirst for freedom.
This is just this, it's like listening to communist propaganda, okay, against the imperial West during the height of the Cold War, okay?
Right.
No, it was all about geopolitics, okay?
That's right. Would they ever blame the Czechs and Slovaks for the Soviet repression of 1968? Well, again, I mean, this is all, I mean, apart from, you know, it's somewhat anachronistic. However, you know, you still have to think in terms of what the situation was in 1968. There were a number of meetings, you know, there were a number of meetings that were held between the Czechoslovak leaders and the Soviet leaders, in which the Soviet leaders gave clear warning that unless you bring the Prague Spring to an end, our patience will run out. I mean, you know, so whether, you know, you may not like that, but nonetheless, that was the reality of the Cold War. The Soviet Union wasn't going to tolerate the Prague Spring indefinitely, since they saw where the Prague Spring was leading. This is part of reality. I mean, this is realism. You have to think, not, you know, oh, well, you know, your freedom. Yeah, okay. What are you going to do when the tanks arrive? What you're going to make speeches? You're going to read out a poem?
Well, isn't this just projection? I mean, okay, George and I can give master classes on Hungary in 56, and we can give a master class on Czechoslovakia of 68. Fine, I can do that quite easily. But what is the EU's culpability for the start of the conflict in Ukraine. What about the Minsk Accords? What is the culpability of the French and of the Germans?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
They have culpability here.
that's right.
Okay. What about the 14,000 plus people killed in the Donbass by the Ukrainian government with the backing of the United States?
Right.
What about that? Ursula, why don't you talk about the here and now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Because we could have a masterclass all you want, but it's not going to end the conflict in Ukraine.
no, that's right. But see, the thing is that they just simply think, oh, well, we're going to just posture, and then that somehow answers all the issues. Oh, well, we're just going to posture. Oh, yeah, 56, 68, we got to Ukraine, thirst for freedom. And then you think, well, what are you actually going to do? I mean, you've been encouraging the Ukrainians and, basically fueling a war, but you're not going to go in. You're not going to basically go in yourself. You're not going to do the fighting yourself. So therefore, you're acting in a completely reckless, irresponsible way in fueling a war that cannot lead to any successful outcome.
And what is the EU's culpability? See, everybody, the usual framing is that Ukraine is a victim. No, it's a volunteer. It volunteered for this.
Right.
And there were people like George and I, and a small number of people say, this is insane what you're doing. And it's being played out as such. Okay. But there, if you want to put blame, explain to us all how you got the Ukrainians to volunteer to such a fool's errand.
That's right. That's right. And then we Europeans have different histories and different languages, but there is no European language in which peace is synonymous with surrender.
Well, it sounds nice. I have no idea what that means.
No, I don't know what that means either. In which peace is synonymous with surrender. And sovereignty is synonymous with occupation. What occupation? What occupation? Throughout this crisis, I mean, you were talking about Minsk, there was no talk of occupation, no talk of occupation at all. On the contrary, we've said this before, Putin's policy in 2014 was to discourage the people in the Donbass, the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, from holding referenda on joining the Russian Federation. I told them, don't do it. So they were opposed.
And he paid a political price for that too,
yes,
George.
Exactly. The people of Ukraine are freedom fighters, just like the heroes that freed Central and Eastern Europe from Soviet rule, except that's not what happened.
It's not what happened.
Exactly.
If you're using that kind of phraseology, and this is more complex than it's going to sound, but then you're talking about Gorbachev. You're not talking about
Gorbachev. Exactly. Because at that time, you're talking about 1987, 88, 89. Soviet rule was not under any threat in Eastern Europe. I mean, basically in Eastern Europe, they sort of accepted, well, this is the reality. You just have to accept it. So the whole idea that were freedom fighters, taking on the tanks, that's not what was happening. Certainly, that's not the way the Hungarians were living. Hungarians, they'd put 56 long way behind them by the mid 80s. And then there's only one path to achieve a just peace for Europe, for Ukraine and for Europe. We must continue to empower Ukraine's resistance with political, financial, and military support. This is the NATO line. We must continue to empower Ukraine's resistance.
How is that worked out, Ursula?
Achieve a just peace. So that's how we can achieve a just peace. No evidence that all this is the case, but that's how we achieve a just peace. Last month in Kiev, I announced that we will provide 35 billion euros in loans to Ukraine as part of the $50 billion pledged by the G7. This loan...
It's such an imperative. It's such a moral imperative. Why is it a loan? Huh?
Yeah. This loan will be repaid by the windfall profits of the immobilized Russian assets.
Through theft. Okay.
Through theft, exactly. and it will flow directly into Ukraine's national budget. We
Oh,
are
how, yeah, that's a really, really good idea.
we are making Russia pay for the damage it caused. But it's theft, what they're doing. And again, why don't they give the money? See, I think their lawyers told them, that's really going to be difficult. Even this is difficult, but if they say if you just give them the money, just this out of this 300 billion euros that you've frozen, that's going to give you real headaches in the courts. So that's why they're doing it in this way, loans and using it as the windfall profits and so on. It's still theft, but it's not quite as egregious a theft as just giving them the money.
Let's put it this way. There will be a couple generation of Kremlin lawyers. They already have their life set before them. It's going to be decades and decades of litigation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Russian side, because of public knowledge, will have at discovery demonstrate that Western economists and lawyers felt this was all very dubious.
That's right.
Okay.
That's it. And we will stand with Ukraine through this winter and for as long as it takes.
Who's we?
Who's we? Yeah. Yeah, and that's a very good question. Who's we? Who are the people, in Europe? I mean, it's clearly there's no one particularly in Europe who is following this, but Ursula von der Leyen really doesn't care about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the sentence should be, and I will stand with Ukraine. Okay?
And yeah, that's right. And this money, which doesn't belong to me, just like when they give money of EU money, also doesn't belong to her. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I mean, this is a completely unaccountable person who's making all these decisions. I mean, who the hell is she to make any of these decisions? And then the second priority I would like to touch upon is competitiveness. And then we see we also see that one government in our union, I wonder which government she means, is heading in the exact opposite direction, drifting away from the single market. How can a government attract more European investments if at the same time it discriminates against European companies by taxing them more than others? Now, what she's referring to is that the Hungarians do tax European companies at a higher rate than domestic companies, but they do that in order to stimulate domestic industries, which is kind of what you're supposed to do if you're a national government, that you can set tax rates whereby it's a higher tax rate for foreign-owned companies than for domestically owned companies. And there's nothing illegal about that. That's been actually determined by the European courts. The countries can set their own tax rates. So she kind of complains, but basically the Hungarians don't want their companies just simply wiped off the face of the earth and taken over entirely by German companies. So that hence the different tax rates. And how can a government be trusted by European businesses if it targets them with arbitrary inspections, blocks their permits, if public contracts mostly go to a small group of beneficiaries?
Okay, well, all she's just saying is that how dare Hungary enforce its own sovereignty?
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's enforcing your own sovereignty. For a not especially prosperous country, I mean, it's important that they want to retain their own domestic industries. They don't want them just simply disappearing. This creates uncertainty and undermines investors' trust. All of this at a time when Hungary's GDP per capita has been overtaken by its Central European neighbors, all of it, which of course is not true, but Hungary is at the heart of Europe, and it should also be at the heart of our economy. The Hungarian people should enjoy the full benefits of our single market.
I'm sorry, maybe this is going way too far, but it's like Netanyahu is saying to the Lebanese, Israel and the Lebanese people have a common bond. We have nothing against you. All you have to do is get rid of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah in the case is Orban.
It's exactly that's your problem. And then, yeah, let me address those who still think that we should stick to dirty Russian fossil fuels. It's dirty and
Really
smelly.
upset. She's really upset.
Dirty, smelly, filthy, Russian fossil fuels. Just really, she's getting completely worked up. It's really disgusting.
Yeah, but there's that kind of German side of her, all foreign stuff are dirty.
Exactly. Dirty Russian fossil fuels. Exactly. It's comes from Russia. Russian fossil fuels are dirtier than anybody else's fossil fuels.
I mean, who has clean fossil fuels?
I don't know exactly. That's kind of. I was thinking about that. Where are these clean fossil fuels? Just a few days after the Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, European leaders gathered in Versailles, and all 27 agreed to diversify away from Russian fossil fuels as soon as possible. And again, how has that worked out for you? So where are we on that pledge? 1,000 days later, Europe has indeed diversified. We built infrastructures and new ties with reliable partners. We invested in cheap and clean energy. No, you didn't. That is made in Europe and with success.
Yeah. Success.
What success? Cheap, cheap energy? No, you don't have any cheap energy. And then in the first half of the year, 50% of all our electricity generation came from renewables that are homegrown from our own energy, which created good jobs in Europe and not in Russia. Again, none of that is true. None of they created these good jobs. There are no good jobs. I mean, they kind of wipe out real jobs, the losses of jobs, massive losses of jobs. It's sort of fantasy that you've created good jobs. But not everyone has acted on the Versailles commitments. Instead of looking for alternative sources,
one
member state, I wonder who, in particular, just looked for alternative ways to buy fossil fuel from Russia. Russia has proven time and again it is simply not a reliable supplier.
There's no that is historically a lie.
It is completely a lie. It's just unbelievable. You did this. You're the one who walked away from the Nord Stream deal, and then the Americans made sure that you wouldn't go back to the deal by destroying the pipelines. You walked away from it. So to say that Russia is not a reliable, and then you said, no, we're not going to import any more Russian coal, and then they said we're not going to import any seaborne Russian oil. So how dare you say Russia is not a reliable supplier? And whoever wants European energy security, first and foremost, has to contribute to it. That's the rule we have to follow. And then finally on migration, and Prime Minister, I heard your words over the weekend. You said Hungary is protecting its borders and that criminals are being locked up in Hungary. I just wonder how this statement fits with the fact that last year your authorities released from prison convicted smugglers and traffickers before they did their time. Well, they released them because that's it. I mean, the prisons are overcrowded. And they said, we've done this. You're not really keeping these borders secure, and they released them. But I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, usually they're berating Hungary for not releasing prisoners. Here they released smugglers and traffickers. But again, the kind of the issue is, well, why don't you secure the borders? Then we wouldn't have smugglers and traffickers.
Exactly, and this is just a straw man argument. Okay, there are smugglers, there are traffickers. Yes, okay, but I mean, when you without permission, without documentation, when you cross another country's border, you're breaking the law. Right. That's what Orban is talking about.
Right. Exactly.
He's not talking about smugglers and traffickers.
That's right. Exactly. And that's the point. So notice that she's not addressing the issue that Orban has raised, which is you're not in control of this illegal migration. You've lost control. She said, "Oh well, it's like Hungary. Hungary is going to release these smugglers and traffickers. It doesn't mean anything. You got the smugglers and traffickers. You basically your borders are not secure."
So Ursula wants to take over Hungary's penal system too.
That's right. Exactly. But it's like
the lady's ambitious, George.
yeah. That's the thing. Orban raises these issues, and all she can do is just attack Orban, and attack Hungary. And then, of course, we all want to better protect our external borders, of course. But we will only be successful if we work together against organized crime. So again, she wants to organized crime. It's exactly the way Kamala Harris talks when it comes to illegal migrants. Well, when I was Attorney General of California, I was prosecuting organized criminals, which isn't the issue. The issue is, why is the border open? We're not talking about what you were doing as Attorney General in California. And speaking about whom to let in, how can it be that the Hungarian government invites Russian nationals into our union without additional security checks? Oh, this is they bring up that somehow there's these Russians, and they're a real threat. There's a real threat. Some, I don't know, Russian bankers or Russian businessmen who are a real threat to the security of Europeans.
If I remember correctly, these are tech people.
I think so. But when people talk about the problem with migration, that's not quite what they mean. They kind of talk about, hey, there are these rapists preying on women in Germany and other countries.
Criminals. The issue is that the border is open for economic migrants. Okay. Right. And that's the problem. Obviously, smugglers and other criminals there, but I mean, if the door wasn't open, they wouldn't get in.
You're absolutely right. That's the whole point. The smugglers, they just simply see an opportunity to make money.
Opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They know, hey, people are going to come in. The door is open, and then they're go to countries and they make a lot of money. Hey, I can get you into Europe. Without additional security. This makes the new Hungarian visa scheme a security risk, not only for Hungary, but for all member states. So everybody's now under threat because of some, tech people from Belarus. Oh no, not the tech people from Belarus. Now we're real trouble.
I think you can answer this, George. I mean, I think it's pretty well known that Hungary is a closed place. If you want to go somewhere, just don't try the Hungarians. It's going to just turn you around. I mean, Hungary is the least of the immigration problem in Europe.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing. And how can it be that the Hungarian government will allow the Chinese police to operate within its territory? I have no idea what the hell she's talking about there. This is not defending Europe's sovereignty. This is a backdoor for foreign interference. I don't think Chinese police operate in Hungary.
Queen Ursula, you are the ultimate backdoor to American influence over the European Union.
That's right. That's right. Yes, exactly.
This could be written in Foggy Bottom at the State Department, George.
Yeah, yeah. No, it absolutely could be. And so that was the this little contretemps in the European Parliament. These Europeans, they'd love to get rid of Orban. I mean, they've been trying to get him out for years and years, but it's very difficult. I mean, they've tried obviously manipulating elections. So every 4 years, they move in a big way, as do the Americans, to mess around with elections. And that hasn't worked. There've been people calling for the expulsion of Hungary from the EU, but that's also difficult. There was no real mechanism to kick anybody out of the EU, so they have to live with it. All they can do is just to keep insulting him. I mean, and hope that at some point, it's like, keep sending more and more aid to Ukraine, and that at some point, Putin is going to come to the negotiating table. That's what, so at some point, Orban will vanish from the scene.
Yeah, but my sense is that Orban will return to Budapest as a hero.
Yeah. That's right.
There'll be flowers at the airport,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Because everybody, it's a simple proposition. You believe in democracy or you don't. There's
yeah.
no middle ground.
You're absolutely right. You're
He,
absolutely right.
he keeps winning elections.
That's
Nothing succeeds like success.
that's
Okay.
exactly right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Ursula, who voted for you?
that's
Remind
it.
me.
That's an excellent point, because in a way that the accusation against Orban is that, well, he's not democratic, but A, he wins elections. B, all the things that the policies that he advocates are all it's about national sovereignty. So these policies that you don't like, like penal policy or his policy on taxation, they are all expressions of national sovereignty. It's a democratically elected government that does those things. You don't have any democratic mandate. You have no business telling somebody, well, you're not supposed to have this tax policy. You have to have this tax policy. Well, who are you? So I speak on behalf of Europe. Well, you don't speak on behalf of anyone. That's like, that's what it's this fantasy, the delusion of people like her. She speaks on behalf of anyone. She doesn't speak on behalf of anyone. But she somehow thinks I'm democracy and he's a dictator.
Exactly. And she projects all of the failures, and there are many of the European Union onto one man.
That's right. That's
Okay?
it.
Because she's infallible. She's like the Pope.
Yes.
Okay. That's how she sees herself.
Yes.
Is the 21st century Pope of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. I think she does exactly. She is infallible. And so when she feels I speak on behalf of 350 million Europeans. Oh, look at me. And it's so easy to do. You don't even have to run for office. You don't have to, you just get to be appointed and you speak on behalf of 350 million people. Nice.
And then when there's something like a pandemic that comes, you can make all these decisions about suppliers and who gets to make the vaccine, where it goes, and all that, all behind closed doors.
Yep.
Okay?
That's
No accountability whatsoever. She still hasn't accounted for it.
no,
Okay.
no.
But if a Donald Trump-like figure had done something like that, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. She put in those orders for those vaccines. According to I think it was about was it, I think 4.5 billion doses of
Yeah.
the vaccine from Pfizer. A lot of money. A lot of money was made there. So on average, 10 doses per man, woman, or child in Europe. That, how did she come up with that number? 10 doses per man, woman, and child. There's been no accounting of that. How she came up with that, and this nice deal she had with Pfizer.
But people were paid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what, the corrupt, I've always living here in Russia talking about corruption. There in the Russian media, there is a anti-corruption crusade going on right now. Okay. It started in the defense ministry, and now it's expanding. Okay. And I just keep telling people, corruption in the West has a smile with it attached to it. Okay. It's called lobbying. Okay. It has a very different persona, but it's just the same thing.
Right.
It's the same thing.
And the way it works in the West is that the bigger you are,
Yes,
the more likely you are to get away with corruption. The corruption charges, it's against the little guy, the one who doesn't have very much protection. They're the one they're going to nail you.
It's a protection racket. That's exactly what it is. Look at Hunter Biden. Look at
exactly the Biden family. I mean, they've been living off the Joe Biden for decades. All of them, huge extended family. They've all been living off Joe Biden. But somebody like Eric Adams, because he's kind of a small fish, he may well not, beat these corruption charges. Whatever, he was bumped up to business class. That you go to prison for.
That's never happened in New York. Never. No, he's being punished because essentially, at the end of the day, everyone, if you peel away the onion, he's a law and order liberal Republican, and he's let it slip. That's what he is. Okay. He's a cop, for God's sake. Okay.
That's right. And he did the unthinkable. He, a Democrat, attacked a Democratic administration, by saying, hey, you're dumping all these immigrants on me and I'm supposed to take care of it. and the New Yorkers are really not happy with all these migrants being dumped in their lap. He actually came out and criticized the administration. They didn't appreciate that, and so they came after him. So he may have some problems. I mean, and they with getting bumped up to business class and a few other little favors, because this was very small scale stuff that he got.
Maybe this is just the first salvo. Okay, are they going to give him a chance for redemption? We'll see. We'll see. This story is interesting from so many different angles. Okay. And it shows a problem of the Democratic Party in the state of New York. I mean, that's like the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. I mean, it's nasty business, New York politics.
Right.
New York
Yeah. No question.
Watch the TV series Billions, and it has a lot about New York State politics. I really like that a lot. Okay. Also a very good one.
Right.
All right, everybody, this is A Gaggle with Peter and George. We're not done with the EU. We won't ever be done with the EU. Okay. All right, we're on local, so please go to thegaggle.local.com. Today is Wednesday. George has his live stream tomorrow.
Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, ideas, opinions, suggestions. Everything is welcome. The more, the merrier. And then thinking about money and addressing the lack of funds, the paucity of funds within the tip jar. Buddy likes these words like paucity and dearth. So the dearth of money. So if you've got some, a few coins lying around, then we could address the dearth problem and the paucity issue with the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And we'll have, ideally, dogs that are content with the tip jar. I know that's never going to happen, but at least we can hope that one day they'll smile with pleasure. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.